Okay. Welcome everyone. So we'll have a short practice together to settle in for tonight's Dharma talk. Please make yourself comfortable and relatively still. You can rest your hands in your lap as you like. Allow your attention to come kind of inward as if you had a series of antennas that we know have been a part of the world around you today. And now we're going to tune the antenna to the inner landscape. And to support your antenna to go inside, it is helpful to let your senses know they can also practice pratyahara, which means to withdraw the senses or to bring your senses inward. You can take a moment to acknowledge the sounds that are around you, whatever they happen to be, and then turn your ears inward. And take a moment, even with the eyes closed, to acknowledge the light against your eyelids. And to relax all the sights you've seen today are now in your past, and you can turn your gaze inward. In fact, allow the muscles of your eyes and even the neurological structures of your eyes and your ears to relax, to go inward. And then invite the same for the tongue and for the nose. Now, we don't have a particular strong flavor right now. Perhaps we don't have a particular strong fragrance, but we have had taste and fragrance today, and that is now in the past. So for seeing, hearing, tasting, and touching, we direct the attention inward. And then soften the skin of your body and let the felt sense of the body also go inward. You might notice inside, if your body were a weather pattern, what is that like right now? And without having to make the breath any bit more dynamic, you can sense the breath moving in, moving out. Maybe it's even a very subtle breath right now, so that what you're tuning into are very subtle sensations. As you take the senses inward, invite them to go inward yet a few degrees more, releasing the sights of the day, the sounds of the day, the fragrances, the tastes, the actions of the body and the outside world. And travel more deeply in. And listen for the place in you that is not right now caught up with the news. The place in you that is deeper than your own thoughts. That in you which has not been influenced by the changeable moods, but remains as a kind of constant. You say in yoga the word abiding. It is your abiding essence. To listen for this, to sense this, to see it inside requires the senses to be very subtle and for the mind to be still. It is that place in you that is not in the seasonal changes of life. It's neither coming nor going, neither past nor future. It is neither self nor other, nor is it consumed with your likes and your dislikes. It is not swung about by grasping and aversion. As you listen for this, now start to make the breath a little bit longer and smoother. And imagine that you're able to breathe this essential abiding nature into the cells of your body, into the muscles, into the organs, into the spaces between the organs. And you can keep the breath subtle so it's like doesn't need to be overpowering. Its strength is in its subtlety. And imagine you're infusing into your body and infusing this also into your senses. Yoga is the practice of having enough time retreating, withdrawing the senses in to contact, to come back home to this essence. And yoga is also then moving back into the world for action. So it is both the practice of pratyahara and then the practice of karma, of action. You try to sense how action might come from your deep connection to this indwelling nature, rather than coming from reaction. And then please join your hands together at your heart. You may sing with me. Om Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. You may bow your head to your heart and release your hands. As you're ready to, you may choose to open your eyes. So how is this meditation for you? You feel you can come into that essence? It is not your past nor your future. It is not comprised of self or other. It is not compromised by the changing seasons of life. We are certainly the unique expression that we are. You know, the skin cells are sloughing off, the hair follicles are doing the hair follicle thing. We have changing moods and thoughts and opinions. The body needs care. It has an appetite, it gets satiated. It has an appetite, it gets satiated. But yoga is also telling us that there is an indwelling suchness, an indwelling, constantly abiding presence, that which doesn't have hunger and then satiation. The physical vessel does have those things. We have to take care of it. And sometimes in the West, we have this perception that if our physical health were at its most peak, then we could access these states of consciousness or grace that yoga is talking about. But actually, we can look at some of the awakened saints and sages over time, and they weren't at the peak of their health. Those of you who know Ramana Maharshi, for example, his life, in the later years of his life, he had bone cancer. But that didn't compromise his understanding of consciousness itself. So we don't have to wait for our peak health. At the same time, the more healthy we are in terms of resilient and breathable and vital, the more leadership we have over our senses, which means we're eating better, sleeping better, making better decisions with our daily routine. The more leadership we have over our reactions and greater sense of mindfulness or compassion, we're more likely to touch that essence, to remember it, and to feel it remembering us. So we do have these practices, and they are essential for helping us to connect with that deep and abiding essence. But that essence isn't a destination that we're going towards. It isn't waiting for us to accomplish the to-do list or to finish the spring cleanse. It doesn't need us to understand all the Yoga Sutras or to chant. If you don't know it, you just hum. So that indwelling essence is a quality of both homecoming and then springing forth from. Most of us in this particular Dharma time, we live in the West. And we have urban lives. We are not ascetic yogis living on mountaintops or in forests. So we probably have a desire for the balance of retreat, renourishment, replenishment, and then also this service, this contribution. And how wonderful that we have the instinct for that service. But now is not a time for us to risk burning out or forgetting that indwelling nature. And a reminder that it's not only our indwelling nature, it is the inner essence of everyone in the call and also in humanity. We don't own it. It's not unique to us. In a way, it might sound painful in the English language when I say, but in a way, that essence is kind of impersonal. But that's also freeing because it's not conditional. That essence doesn't have conditions for you to meet in order to sense that. It is in there. There aren't requirements like accomplishing a certain task or a certain puzzle getting figured out, and then that essence is in you. It's already in us. That being said, of course, yoga also tells us that we're all prone to forgetting this. That forgetfulness is called avidya. We forget our basic nature. We forget the basic nature of others. We find some people's expressive nature to be offensive or uncomfortable or less than likable. We find other people's expressive nature to be likable, to be pleasing, to be inspiring. We find some people to be neutral. We don't have much, doesn't really bother us one way or the other. So here in the personality world, in the expression world, of course, we have many responsibilities. And we want to use our capacity for expression and relationship wisely and well as yogis. But I don't want us to consider that it's a certain personality that is gifted with this essence, or a certain status in life, or a certain amount of health, because this suchness, which shines through the eyes of everyone, is non-exclusive. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is talking to Arjuna, he is saying that Krishna says that he is the taste of the water. He is the light in the fire. He is the sweetness of things that have the sweet taste. He is all of those things. And what basically is being said is that our essence is infusing us and everything around us. So we also can't co-opt it from trees or animals or other creatures on the planet. We're unique as a species because we have this extra capacity for consciousness to actually come to know that essence. But that essence isn't reserved for us and not the ladybug. It isn't reserved just for us, but not the tulip. The tulip may not know itself to be that essence, but the tulip is a simple organism, so it's sharing its gift as it is. So when we have a chance to retreat, replenish, renew, kind of recalibrate, and then we remember that, all of those words start with remember, recalibrate, replenish, rejuvenate, retreat. When we have that and we get to return to our understanding, the version of us that we then put into the world is hopefully more skillful. And right now, my hope is that that more skillful version of us is also helping to role model, inspire, and raise up others. Any questions about what I've said so far? Any questions or comments that you want to add? And you can, there's a raise your hand function in Zoom. You can actually push a button and it raises your hand. And I can see that on the screen if you do that. No one is disagreeing that this essence is everywhere, infusing everything. You feel good with that?
Hey, Sarahjoy, it's Jesse.
Hi.
Hey, I'm finding that even during the meditation, like the fear based aspect of my daily existence now is just kind of, yeah, that's all I think about. And so I'm having a hard time getting in touch with the suchness.
Yeah, because the fear is bigger than the suchness right now.
Yeah.
Let me just check my brightness on this if I can. I don't know how to do that. I'm on a monitor and a computer at once, so I don't know how to make the shift I was going to make. Let me see if my light has another setting to go up.
Is it better?
Okay. Yeah. So, Jesse, I think that's a really ideal comment to be making, because one of the ways that we get distracted from that deep remembering is fear. So let me talk about it for a moment in terms of the human condition and the first chakra. So we're born as this beautiful, innocent essence. And when we come into the world, what's activated in the chakra system is the first chakra. And without any sense of I, without any sense of self, we arrive here needing to be cared for by others. We arrive here dependent on their capacity to care for us. And we don't mind that kind of vulnerability. We don't even cognize it as I'm completely dependent and therefore I'm also helpless and vulnerable. It's our state when we arrive. And in good fortune, we arrive to families that are also so happy to greet us. That is not everyone's experience. Not everyone was born into loving hands or a beneficial circumstance. The planet is hugely crowded, so we know that there's a diverse numbers of ways in which people are born. But in that moment of our arrival and in those first few months of our complete dependency on everyone around us, we don't have a sense of I am dependent, I am helpless, I am vulnerable, I am relying on other people. We can't make those particular sentences. But we do have a survival instinct. It's hardwired to us. And so if we become too cold or too hot, we cry out. If we become too hungry, we cry out. If we become too wet, we cry out. If we go too long without contact, we cry out. If we have too much invasive contact, we try to gaze avert. We try to move away. And as we develop a bit, months go by and we come into some physical capacity and agency, when we can't do something that we want to do because we don't have it all learned yet, we can also cry out in frustration. A kind of developmental frustration, right? Can't quite make the square peg go in the proper hole, and frustration. And so right now with the circumstances, we are completely dependent upon each other. We're interdependent. And as some of the poems that I've read in class say, our health is truly in each other's hands. We are completely dependent. We're also profoundly vulnerable right now. And we share that circumstance. In terms of in my lifetime, it's the first time in my lifetime that the entire globe shares this circumstance. That the virus is bigger than any country. It's bigger than any particular language. It's not only north or only south, it's everywhere. And we want to make things better. Of course, we don't want to feel so helpless, so vulnerable. So we have the crying out. We might get too hungry. We might make ourselves too full. We might feel too frightened. We might go too long without contact and feel that kind of crying out too. And we might get the frustration of our inner toddler. It's like, I can't make it work. I can't make this go away. I can't on my own have the agency to make that stop. I can't protect everything and everyone that I love. I can, of course, do my very best, but that frustration and fear mixed together, it makes sense at the primitive and neurological level of our species right now. Am I making sense, Jesse?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it helps to put it in context, and not just. I mean, there's action, but I think you're right. Like, it's definitely a moment where I think, it's like the whole situation is a round hole and I've got the square peg and it's not, not quite coming together. So,
Yeah.
So I was just thinking about that internal weather system and the amygdala and and the constantness of it. But, I think also just just being aware of it and sitting with it more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So while these things are true, what I'm saying, like there's the first chakra, there's the second chakra, and I'm referring back to when we were born, how we were toddlers. We are also, all of us on the call right now, we're past the toddler phase of life. We can still access the frustration of being 2 years old, or the sorrow that we experienced when we were 3 years old. And by that, I mean, in the present moment, when your spouse looks like a toddler, it's because their past is showing up in the now, and they are acting from their 2 or 3 year old brain. And of course, not only your spouse, but people seem to reserve that for their spouses. So that being said, we're all in our biological adulthood. So we've had experiences of contribution and skill and action. we've been able to make some things work. We fixed a bicycle tire. We built a fire for a campsite that we were at. We had enough agency to do things where there was joy and collaboration and harmony. And we can have a sense of what that feels like and how much we would long for that right now. And for us to collaborate on the most, I should say it differently, for us to collaborate as a species on the least damaging outcome for the COVID-19, we have to collaborate, but we can't be in person together while we're sheltering in place. So the paradox to the mind is really huge. And for us as a species where we're so dependent on contact and support, this is really a primal difficulty for us right now. So then if we add to, for those of us for whom the earliest life wasn't as stable, didn't have as much continuity, wasn't as consistent, basic needs weren't always met in a loving way, even at the basic level, if that enoughness wasn't there, there can be this conditioned neurological, historical apprehension and trepidation. And some of that can be pushing up right now through the chakra system. And from the first chakra fear center to the amygdala fear center, it's very rapid, a rapid fire. And since we moved from the infancy to the toddlerhood and so on and so forth, we also are conditioned to recognize that other people are not that fond of our vulnerability. Now in our community here, those of you on the Zoom call, those of us gathered together tonight, we may have a lot of respect for vulnerability. We may even want to support the vulnerability of others. In fact, we enjoy transparency and authenticity and courageousness of heart. And we're on this path that requires those things as yogi warriors. But in our system here, at least in the US, to be a person of vulnerability, people feel like they're going to be shunned, they'll be annihilated, they won't be taken care of. They feel like they're going to have to hide that vulnerability from others. So we learn ways for hiding our vulnerability, including, and this is very strong at the third chakra. So vulnerability as an emotion, as a felt sense, is in the second chakra. It's like the vulnerability of our sorrow, the sense of loss, the sweetness, the poignancy, the longing. This is in the second chakra. So since it's not that permitted in our society, we go up to the third chakra where we want to appear to have it together. We want to appear to have like meaningful capacity. We appear to know what we're doing. And for some of us at the third chakra, we appear to have self-esteem, but we're kind of putting it on. And for others, when we can't find a way to protect that vulnerability, or we still feel that being accepted by our family, our society, we're at risk, we can do things like become addicted, use substances, find a way to numb the pain that's in the lower chakras. We can co-opt, get numb. Sometimes we fight. Sometimes we have something that numbs us. So then that is how we show up in our adulthood. So it's not a very, if we were to stop the story at this point, it'd be kind of depressing, because, oh, then we show up in adulthood, we're putting it on, we're faking it, we're trying to be somebody, we want acceptance. We might have our hidden addiction, we have our hidden esteem issues, we have the ways that we might bully ourselves or others, and we have the ways that we expense ourselves by, if I'm needed, then nobody will reject me. We have the ways of burning ourselves out at the third chakra as well. So all of that fire at the third chakra, then we show up in adulthood and we want these hearts of compassion, but they're not really prepared. The heart isn't prepared because down below in the first three chakras, things have gone awry. We want that native quality in the heart for sure. And it's so beautiful when our vulnerability and our togetherness and our communion and our community is able to pierce through all of that sort of stuff. Very important stuff, but we can call it for a moment all of that bullshit. precious, important healing work to be done on what that stuff is. But when that gets pierced and you really sense, it's very huge. It's bigger. You sense that which is larger than you, that which is larger than the both of us, or any one of us. So the fear, Jesse, of course it has its place and its expression right now. But since we have come into adulthood, and those of you who are here, we have committed to a spiritual path, we have some tools and some resources. We can also bring our wise self, who's been growing for all these decades and years, to help tend to the fear, the parts that are frightened. So that's what we might call like bringing the wise mind down into the heart and then bringing that down into the other chakras. And really take care of your chakra system right now. That the earth element at the first chakra, you would sense you are stable enough right now. Stable enough to be honest with yourself, and for all of us to be honest, that the circumstances are difficult. So coming down to say I'm stable enough is not then saying, and that's all that matters. It's saying, I'm stable enough to have the courage to face reality. That this is a very difficult and potentially devastating, in numbers that we can't conceive of, a very difficult circumstance. But if I'm stable here, I want the fortitude to be able to be with what's coming. At the second chakra, when we have this wise mind heart coming down to the second chakra, we say, and I also want the capacity to grieve the losses, because there will be loss, and there already has been in our lives, unresolved, ungrieved losses, more losses coming right now. We want the second chakra to be able to hold the sorrow to come. And we want the strength and the flexibility and the porousness that those emotions could be felt by us, not be frozen or oppressed by us. So if we have at the first chakra enough stability, at the second chakra enough vulnerability, we come up to the third chakra, and as we're here, we do not want to lose sight of the purpose of life, the Dharma itself. And as far as I can tell from all the studies that I've done and the teachers that I've met, the purpose of life was not to acquire more possessions. The purpose of life wasn't to acquire a stronger reputation. It wasn't to build an empire of your own greed and so on. The purpose of life at the third chakra is massively confused here in the US. I'm not saying you guys, but just in our cultural system. We do have very devastating circumstances in the US, but we haven't lived under artillery fire. We haven't lived in buildings that were bombed that are only partial shelters made into homes. We haven't had the experience like in Haiti. We haven't been so upfront and so close to the devastation and the vulnerability of other societies, what they have faced. So we have this misperception at the third chakra here in the States that we're going to buy more things, have more things, acquire more things, and that's going to somehow keep us safe. We also have that in terms of our efficacy or our professionalism, or maybe our status and how we pursue our job or our education. It's going to provide some safety. We are finding out that it doesn't pan out to be true. So part of our work as a society is really here at the third chakra to be willing to go down to the second chakra and say, wow, we too are going to be so vulnerable here. We are already. Since our society hasn't really practiced being in this kind of fear, being in this kind of unknown, we can feel really attacked by such things. We can feel that we got invaded. This virus came from somewhere else, and sort of how dare it also come to us. That's a relatively self-centered perspective that somehow it should have It should have only stayed in other countries. It should not have come back here, but it has. So the first chakra, we say, stable enough to be in reality with what's happening. The second chakra, the water element, capable of being in our vulnerability, to see the experiences, to have the courageousness of that. And the third chakra, to recalibrate, what is the purpose of my life? And then up to the fourth chakra, where we get to touch the heart of compassion from there. So I wanted to speak about the third chakra tonight because it is the seat for our sense of potential. And it also is where the effort that we have to make right now should be going upwards in the chakra system. But we tend to take our third chakra energy and try to push life forward. We're going to push through it. We're going to get stuff done. I'm going to get this organized. I'm going to use my power and my agency. And sometimes it's just so wonderful to clean the kitchen cabinet and to feel like you have some control over your life again. But please know, when you're cleaning the kitchen cabinet, you're getting a little feeling of agency and leadership and control, and how amazing that is. And it should only be used to restabilize you, not to give you the false sense that the purpose of life is to have clean kitchen cabinets. It's okay to have clean kitchen cabinets, please do so, but it's not the purpose of our life to do that. So in terms of what can happen here, one of the dilemmas that I feel very close to because of the path of my life is that people tend to underestimate the potential of those who have succumbed to addiction, or the pain of early life has led their life in a certain direction. So those who live in prison, we have underestimated the potential of so many. We underestimate a person of color, a person of less means, a person who's marginalized. We underestimate the potential. And that's heartbreaking for all of us. To the extent that we underestimate that, we might also at times overestimate who we're supposed to be. Again, trying to put on that sense of, I have to be this, I have to be that, because my survival depends on the story I'm telling myself, I have to be that. So we overestimate who we're supposed to be while underestimating who other people could be. You guys have a sense of what I'm saying there? It's okay? So what I want to do is show you Viktor Frankl talking about this, where he's going to say how we should aim past, we should really see human nature in such a different way. And I want to do screen sharing for this, so pardon me as I get that set. Okay, can you see that relatively big? It's on my full screen right now. And let me ask you if you can hear this, because I'm using my Yeti microphone, which is picking up my voice. Will it pick up my computer sound? You can tell me.
Money! In Europe, every American student.
Can you hear that, Amelia? You can do thumbs up for me? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear it.
He also has a great sense of humor, so listen for that too.
If more every American adult is regarded as someone who is just out to make a lot of money. Really, 16% of these students regarded their main goal and concern in life to make a lot of money. I'm quoting literally, make a lot of money. And you know what the top class, the top category, we say category, what do you say? Category was among, you excuse me, but I know I am speaking a marvelous accent without the slightest English. Now, you know what the top category was? 78% of these American youngsters were concerned, as they expressed it themselves, with finding a meaning and purpose in their lives. So this is a realistic view of man. And you know, you won't believe it, gray hair, my age, I started taking flying lessons recently. Do you know what my flying instructor told me? If you are starting here, wish to get here, say east, heading for this, and you have a crosswind, you will drift and you will land here. So you have to do what we pilots call crabbing, he told me, C-R-A-B, crabbing. You have to head for north of this airfield, and you have to fly that way, you see, as if you headed in this direction. If you are heading here above this airfield, then you will actually land here. But if you head for here, you are landing here. This holds also for man, I would say. If we take man as he really is, we make him worse. But if we overestimate him, it's premature, your applause, you will soon know why. If we seem to be idealists and are overestimating, overrating man, and looking at him that high, here above, you know what happens? We promote him to what he really can be. So we have to be idealists in a way, because then we'll wind up as the true, the real realists. And you know who has said this? If we take man as he is, we make him worse. But if we take man as he should be, we make him capable of becoming what he can be. This was not my flight instructor, this was not me, this was Goethe. He said this verbally. And now you will understand why I, in one of my writings, once said, this is the most apt maxim and motto for any psychotherapeutic activity. So if you don't recognize a young man's will to meaning, man's search for meaning, you make him worse, you make him dull, you make him frustrated, you still add and contribute to his frustration. While if you presuppose in this man, if in this so-called criminal or juvenile delinquent or drug abuse and so forth, there must be a what we call spark, yeah? A spark of search for meaning. Let's recognize this, let's presuppose it, and then you will elicit it from him, and you will make him become what he in principle is capable of becoming.
Okay, I have to pause that just a moment, please. Okay, what do you think? Is that inspiring? How much vitality he has at 72 years old, and he's taking flying lessons. What happens for you in your body when you're listening to him, when you feel he's compelling us to a certain view? What happens in your body?
I have a more lightness of being listening to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too.
Also for Nancy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How about Karen?
Oh, yeah, I just feel an energy, an inspirational energy within my body to, and I'm also doing some ponderings about how I've underestimated others. Of course, that's my analytical self, but it leads me to feel truly to look at the optimal best in everybody. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah. We can underestimate others. We also can underestimate ourselves. And then we can overestimate who we're supposed to be. I mean this dynamically, like everyone needs me to do A, B, and C. If I don't do it, nobody else will. If this doesn't happen, people will be disappointed. And we can actually move. So this is our third chakra. We can move away from it. So we're going away from home. we are spending our resources on this instead of having it be this ascent through the chakras. And it's kind of our duty to check that, to pull that back in, especially if we've conditioned people to sense that, yeah, we'll be the one who's there. We got it, don't worry, you know, we have to pull that back in, because the risk of burning out from here is very high. And it's not likely our life purpose to make sure that we're always the one who does A, B, and C. It's not collaborative to over assume what our duties are. It's collaborative to work with everyone's potential. And of course, I know I'm touching on things like even there's household dynamics. And in our household, if you ask one of us, any one of us could feel like we're the one who's doing everything. I'm doing it all, they're doing nothing. Somebody else could say that in my household, they're doing it all, I'm doing nothing. These perspectives are sometimes, there's some misperception going on about each other. And I was speaking about the chakra system a couple times in my classes online, how at the 5th chakra, we have to be able to speak clearly, honestly, not repressing, not swallowing the words, and not using the words to be too sharp or damaging. But to speak now we're in our homes, can we speak with clarity, with honesty, with purpose, not to cause conflict, but to raise each person up to who we could be. Is this making some sense, you guys? Yeah. Yeah, so Marlene, his accent is very thick, I understand. So you might, I can post the link for the video, but you can also look for it like this in the search bar. Viktor Frankl, Why to Believe. And then see if there's one that somebody might have made the audio a little bit more clean than the one that I found for tonight. But he was saying that people, this is in 1972, that people thought the college-age students were mostly interested in earning money. So they did a kind of a poll. And what they found was that it was only 16% of them who said they really were compelled to earn money. And 78% were inspired by discovering what the meaning of their life might be, what their purpose was going to be. That was in 1972. So that is that 48 years ago? Oh my God, yeah, it is, because I'm 51 and I was born in 1968. All right, so that's 48 years ago. Human nature, we have to understand this about human nature. The shadow side of human nature is very strong. Since 72, which came after the 60s with the peace, love, and happiness movement and the difficulties of the Vietnam War, to acknowledge both. But since then, if we took the poll today, would it feel to us like there's a higher percentage trying to pursue money because of our cultural inclinations, or a higher percentage trying to pursue purpose and meaning and Dharma? At the 3rd chakra sits the inclination for greed. And in the shadow of the 3rd chakra, greed will get bigger. And our particular country, our culture, is very greed-based. We take resources on the planet from somewhere else to bring back here to suit our lives. We do things like companies have the least possible expense by those workers there making the things that we want here, and so on and so forth. So greed is in the shadow aspect of human nature, and so we could do a poll and find out, is that percentage rising for those who want to make a lot of money, or are we feeling more young people like meaning and purpose and Dharma is essential to them? You following okay what I'm saying? I don't want to be a downer because Nancy and Jesse just had this lightness come, but I want us to have at the 1st chakra the inner stability as a person and as a community, as a sangha, to look at reality and to say, if the circumstances of our global pandemic, if we look back and see where were we going out of balance decades ago, to put the circumstances together in such a way as today this can spread like this. So the 3rd chakra is also the place where in its shadow, we have things like fault finding. I spoke about this in the restorative class this afternoon. So greed, fault finding, wrath. The word wrath is very specific. We have the capacity for wrath. It's at the third chakra. Like when you suddenly feel this surge of resentment or wrath against somebody else, you're touching a hot spot in your own system. And this hot spot, if you go down to the second chakra, you have your own unmet needs there, and they just got activated. If you go down to the first chakra and you add to that fear, so you have fear and unmet needs, you have this brush fire of resentment and wrath. Has this happened to anybody? Yes. So that's also important to be honest with ourselves, that we have these seeds in us too. So right now it feels like there's a discernment, which is also the quality of the third chakra is discernment. There's an opportunity for us to discern, how do I want to live in this time, in the COVID-19 time? How do I want to live in this time so that on the other side, what keeps emerging for me is the path that's more about the Dharma from the third chakra and not about the shadow side of the third chakra. How am I going to do that? But even more importantly, how will we do that? How will we use our voices to encourage other people? You know, in our personal homes, but also in our neighborhoods and in our schools and our communities and so on. So in a way, it's a very big calling, right, to have what I'm speaking to, but you're on the path of yoga, and you've heard the rumors that it's a path for awakening and also for service. I'll speak more about that in just a moment, but I have a note from Debbie Ellis. It was Rachel, I think. Yeah, Rachel mentioned her mom earlier. Okay.
Sarahjoy.
Yeah.
Hi. I wanted to, it made me, watching that, it made me think of Rebecca talking about her mom who's 71 and being kind of pushed out of her,
Oh, yes,
her nursing job. And I'm sure it's like this with other careers, but particularly my experiences with nurses. And I come from a long line of nurses, my mother, my grandmother, everybody. And they are, it is such an identity that this is part of who you are. I saw this with my mother and my grandmother when the idea of retiring was, they died before they retired.
Mm.
And I didn't want that to happen. I retired and here I am back again nursing. But I think the thing that struck me is he's 72 years old. He's taking those flying lessons. It's trying to help people when they're in that position to see that it's not the end when you're not doing it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There are other things. And that's the key. I didn't see that really until I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do a yoga studio.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never would have thought, that's the most craziest thing at my age, 64 years old, doing yoga teacher training and now yoga therapy teacher training. So it's a direction I had no idea I had the capacity to enter into. So Rebecca, I think just, you know, helping your mom see that it's being out of nursing can be the beginning of something else and not the end of who she is.
Mm-hmm.
So great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
That's really helpful. And I put your number in my phone, so thank you.
Okay. Okie doke. Thanks.
Thank you, Debbie. Yeah. Yeah. So we have this opportunity here because the requirements, the apparent suddenness of the circumstances and the possible, as I said, bigger devastation than we can see from here, it could compel us to go down, as Jesse was saying, when fear arises, we can go down to the first chakra, we can feel like hiding. This is called fight, flight, freeze, submit. down at the first chakra. We could feel like, I'm just going to retreat and hide. Another option would be that we go down to the second chakra and we freeze. We get numb. We wait for this to be over. And we're freezing by doing things that numb us, by also freezing our emotions. We might feel like we can't cry, we can't soften, we can't let the vulnerability in. It's like too great, too big for us to bear. And there's something that's actually true about that. I want to say, if it feels too big to bear, it's probably an indication that earlier in life when things were too big to bear, there wasn't somebody there to help you hold the emotional experiences. And in the absence of someone as a companion, I have my props right here. Look at that, you guys. It's like Mr. Rogers. This is Alice Miller's work. Just happens to be on my bookshelf right here. If there wasn't that loving witness to be with us in these huge things that are too big to hold, we can certainly feel that right now, that this will be too big to hold. But if we become each other's loving witness, and if we use our practices to stabilize our life, the first and second chakra don't need to pull us down to hiding, submitting, freezing, and retreating like a turtle. We need the daily retreat for our practices, right? We need the refuge and the pratyahara. But now is not a time for those of us who are on the spiritual path to decide that we have to check out and back away and wait for this all to kind of blow over. Because there are fewer people committed to the Dharma and to awakening and to consciousness, and more people are committed to greed and power and getting back to life as it was. So we can't, as people already on the path, I'm imploring you not to be someone who goes into groundhog mode or ostrich mode. We do need to stabilize at the first chakra. We do need our vulnerability at the second chakra. And we need to know how to tend to our fire at the third chakra. So when it feels like it's too big to hold, might be a sign that we need community, we need sangha, we need somebody else to help us hold what it is. How does that sound so far? You're okay? Yeah, thank you, Kathy. I can see your hand. You're good at sign language. So this afternoon in the restorative class, I was talking about releasing some of the shadow aspects of the third chakra. I think we can do it. We're capable of becoming more free of those shadow qualities. But we have to know that they're there if we're going to become free from them. So for example, I was speaking a few moments ago about resentment and wrath, which are like very fiery emotions. They rush up, they take over the system, and we are in fight and fire mode. And it feels justified because fear is also fueling that fight and that fire. It can feel very justified. So if in fact that fire represents that there are unmet needs and there are real imbalances, let's say imbalances in how hard we're working relative to how much contribution somebody else is making, and if their capacity is more, could they bring more in? If there are real imbalances in what's happening, that wrath, that fury might be an important symptom to say, how can we reflect on this differently? So I don't want you to condemn your fury or your wrath. I don't want you to put it on others in an unhelpful way, but I'm proposing that we see it as a symptom asking for some attention. When we add fear to resentment, wrath, and fury, it will escalate very quickly. So it's important, if we're going to look at how our wrath shows up or how our resentment shows up, if we're going to look at it wisely, we do have to settle our fear instinct by having the stability of our practices in our community. They call this in yoga the sangha. So let me ask just for a few moments, those of you who feel like you could say, the last time that you had resentment or wrath, you can bring that one up, bring it into your memory for a moment. If it was just a couple hours ago, that's even better. If you were to imagine what unmet needs are underneath that wrath or that fury, what might you say some of those things are? I'm going to ask Maren because she was nodding her head a few moments ago.
Uh-oh. I'm still thinking. I mean, I think it's one thing to identify that I had that feeling, but then when I try to find, well, what is the underlying unmet need? That's a trickier exploration.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, sometimes just knowing that it's there, that the anger or the wrath come, that is a very important stage in the process for sure.
Yeah. That will take more consideration on my part.
That's good. All good. Yeah.
Sarahjoy?
Debbie?
Yeah, I can think of something that recently happened. There's a particular person who, the majority of the time, 80% of the time, I can be the observer, and then she knows how to push some buttons, and now I get really frustrated. And when I think about that, when I felt that kind of frustration as a child, it was when I was not heard by my mother at all. So it was like, it was silent treatment stuff. But what I've been able to discover recently, and what has been in my mind, is this, and I probably got it from something of yours that I read, is listening. When you can quiet the mind, you can hear the whisper of the spirit, or of the essence of who you are. So I'm able to tap into that, so I don't so quickly react. However it happened, I don't know how it happened, but that's something that I noticed.
Yeah. So one of the unmet needs that could be in your system and easily activated today, but with more awareness, less often activated, but it's the need to feel heard, the need to be heard, maybe a need for respect. Am I getting that okay?
Yeah.
Sarahjoy?
Yes.
When I think about the idea of wrath, and most of the time when it manifests is around issues of race for me. And it, because of most of the environments I interact with are white spaces, as a Black woman, I'm not seen. So I'm very well aware that it's about being seen rather than being invisible.
Yeah. Being seen, not being invisible, not being overlooked, not being made homogenous either. These are all very important, like actually being seen, not homogenized, not invisible, not dismissed, not overlooked. It's so essential for our experience of safety and relationality.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I often say. I'm looking for connection, not disconnection. If I point out that there is a Black woman in the room, and that immediately creates a sense of disconnection rather than connection, and I'm seeking connection.
Yes, yes, yes. Well said. Thank you. Anybody else, when you have a sense of the fury or the wrath that comes, what unmet needs might be underneath there?
Somebody earlier typed in safety.
Yeah, so that is for sure. That's the fear adds to fury, adds to the brush fire. Yeah, thank you, Barb, for writing that in there. So the recognition that it's there, as Maren said, recognizing that it's happening. Thank you, Katrina, for your note. Recognizing that it's happening is one of the biggies. The question then is, what do we do with it? How are we going to be in relationship with it? And if we consider that being frightened, being vulnerable, and being angry weren't things that were readily welcomed. And at a certain age in our lives, we were told not to be so angry, not to be so vulnerable, not to be so scared. And right now, those particular strong emotions, first, second, third chakra, can fire up. We are scared, we do feel vulnerable, and we probably feel angry in some ways because our agency is being impeded upon. So what to do with this? So we're going to do a short practice right now where you can sit comfortably. We're going to go into a breathing and inquiry practice that's meant to help us understand how will we stay in relationship with these emotions, which are essential for us to aim through the chakras to be able to go upwards. So I'd like you to sit upright and kind of have a vertical reach to your spine as if the chakras were stacked on top of each other, please. Then you can rest your hands out over your knees or in your lap. And then you can close your eyes if you like and allow your breathing to become smoother and a little bit deeper in your body. And then again, soften your senses to go inward, to be retreating for right now. So we need periods of engagement. We call this discourse. We need periods of retreat and reflection. We need periods of action and service, and also periods of renewal and replenishment. As you close your eyes, turn inward. Allow your ears to go inward. And let the senses, as they turn inward, remember all the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes of the day. Those have faded. And we're here in the present, in the fresh and simple experience of the present. For right now, the words have been spoken, the words have been heard, the narratives can fade. We're going to go deeper in, past the senses, past the narrative we tell ourselves about ourselves, to that indwelling suchness, which is the red of the tulip and the flight of the bumblebee. It is the taste of water, and also that which is helping your eyelashes to be eyelashes. As you retreat in to find that place of really immense presence, start to sense it is that which is also infusing everyone else who's on the call. It's infusing everyone and everything. When you sense how immense this presence is, also sense for now its benevolence. This presence is neither past nor future, neither self nor other. It is not our likes and our dislikes. It has not been compromised by the seasons of life. It does not belong to one political party, not to one race, not to one economy. Try to sense that which gives flight to the bumblebee, the red to the tulip, the taste of water, the structure of your eyelashes. And this immense and really benevolent presence has room for fear to emerge. So come down to the first chakra without losing contact with that immense presence. And just try to sense that fear is welcome and is smaller than this immensity. Let your breath come down to touch the first chakra. And the breath can represent, like an ambassador of that presence, to touch this sphere and to say, I see you, I understand. And then coming back to the immense presence, like the backdrop to all things. Remembering it is larger than the experience of sorrow or vulnerability. And then let your attention come down to the second chakra, and to rest there, bring with you that immense presence. Breathe into the second chakra to say, I see you, I understand. So in a way, this vulnerability, this sorrow indicates something important and precious, and yet is not larger than that immense benevolence. And move your attention back to the wide angle lens of this immense presence, more subtle than your senses. The taste in the water, the structure of eyelashes, the color of the ladybug. And then come into the third chakra where you can sense the difficulty that we have with rage or wrath, frustration. Recognizing again that this frustration or wrath is also not larger than that immense presence. Imagine that benevolence breathing into the third chakra to also say, yes, this too. And you sense at the first, the second, and the third chakra, now pan back to the wide angle lens. And for a few moments, imagine that everyone, everywhere can succumb to fear in an unhelpful way. Everyone, everywhere is subject to feeling terrified. It is our human condition. And sensing in the species that everyone, everywhere could be susceptible to feeling vulnerability, sorrow, grief. It is not only you uniquely struggling with those things. And then sensing at the third chakra that everyone, everywhere is susceptible to rage, frustration, wrath. It's in the species. So sensing that it is not uniquely you. And still, this immense presence is larger than the accumulation of all of that. Now pan back your attention to the wide angle lens again, where you sense that presence that infuses the sun, the stars, the roots of the crocus, the flight of the bird, and your hair follicles. And coming down to the first chakra to greet that in you which is capable of deep humility, recognizing we are dependent upon the ecology and each other. Come into the healthy expression of deep humility. Our lives are precious and finite. Let's touch this in a knowing and sensing way at the first chakra. We become deeply humble. And then recognizing that everyone, everywhere, could tap into, has the capacity for that deep humility. And then move your awareness again to the wide screen, the immense presence, that which is most benevolent, not changed by the seasons or the comings and goings, that which is regenerating your skin cells while you occupy yourself with emails and chopping broccoli. And then come down to the second chakra, the sense, the sort of sacred vulnerability, the willingness, the poignancy. And allow that benevolent presence to breathe through you to touch the second chakra, this beautiful, sacred vulnerability. And bring into your awareness that humans everywhere have the capacity for this sacred vulnerability. It is possible to rise into this kind of understanding. It is also deeply respectful to life that we can have this vulnerability. Now bring your awareness back to the immense benevolent presence, that which is keeping your eyes watered enough, that which translates tiny vibrations in your inner ears to be sound, the needles on the trees, the way the hellebore grows with the flower pointing down. And then come to the third chakra, where you can sense your capacity for discernment and Dharma. Discernment, to know that which is wise from that which is unwise. Discernment and Dharma, a sense of your quiet contribution to the welfare of humanity. And then imagine this spark. Viktor Frankl called it a spark. Imagine this spark is in everyone and everything. It is not uniquely owned by you. This spark is a part of the species. Imagine that in all beings everywhere. Notice how your chakras are responding when you sense these potentials are also a part of the system. And then return once more to the wide angle lens of the immense presence. And then come to the fourth chakra, the heart. And you can sense the quality of heart you have here as a result of this meditation. And you can imagine the quality of heart that would be widespread if humans lived with deep humility for the preciousness of life and the earth. If we allowed for the sacred vulnerability. If we lived with discernment and Dharma. So sense what happens for you in this practice, and then coming up to the fifth chakra, the throat, you might ask of yourself, well, what words need to be spoken? What communication needs to be had? How will your voice be a part of this process? And sensing whatever comes from that inquiry. You don't have to land on something right now, and it need not be completely focused. Just know that the chakra system is all integrated, and there is a need for the voice, for speaking. Please bring your hands together at your heart. So discernment is knowing the real from the unreal, knowing the finite from the infinite, knowing the experience of skillful and unskillful discernment that we can chant together. Om Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. And then you may bow your head to your heart if you like. And release your hands. Please open your eyes if you'd like to. And I would be interested to know from you how you experienced this meditation, this practice. We're going from the wide angle to the personal, which is smaller than this immense presence. And then we spread out. We spread out to include. I would like to know of your experience. It helps me to know if it was effective, nourishing, provocative, debilitating, renewing, inspiring, agitating. Can I ask Sarah, I haven't seen you for a while. How was the meditation for you?
It was good. Oh, you can't hear me. Hold on.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was recentering. It was recentering when you had, when you widen the lens, my mind would wander and it would bring me back.
Mm.
It was very recentering.
I'm glad to know. I know you're working in the medical field right now.
I'm at work right now.
Oh, you are at work right now. You're having the Dharma at work.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So often people say to me, for example, I recommend a sort of home practice or a yoga thing, or they could speak something, a change of life, a particular routine recalibration. And they say, oh, I could never do that. Now I'm going to tell them that you were at a medical facility listening to a Dharma talk during the COVID-19 virus, that you made it possible.
I have my mask.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You're really demonstrating what it takes at the third chakra that we want to rise. We need this whole system, and we need each other. We need community and collaboration.
Definitely.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Anybody else who'd like to say? I see the notes in the chat box. Thank you.
Sarahjoy,
Yes.
I would just like to say that, this is Karen, the way that you describe the immensity and the vastness with the details of roots of crocuses and eyelashes and skin cells, I've never quite experienced that. I am extremely, I just broadened so deeply, and I just want to thank you for, I want every one of those descriptions. I think they're in me to remember them. But I just have to say, it's the way you present those that is so rich and so deep. I just will take that with me in my sleep and my meditation and just all my visualizations from here on. I've listened to some big name people that are all out on the internet these days, you know. Your words and your vision and the way that you put it out there speaks to my heart more than most of those. So thank you so much.
I'm glad it's resonating.
Yeah, me too.
I would like all of us to sense that the difficulties at the first three chakras, it's completely real.
Yeah.
It is real. And there are people who could not access this kind of gathering right now. But their essence, that is what I call the benevolent presence, is holding them too. Their capacity to know that may be very fractured or obscured or inaccessible because life has been so unfair, inequitable. We have not treated each other as a shared humanity. We have devastated the possibilities of human nature by how we've been living. So we want to say it's very real. We're not in any denial. That's why the first chakra, we have to be stable enough to say, I am not going to be in denial. I see the devastation that we've caused. Maybe I arrived on the planet just 50 years ago and it started before I got here, of course, but I still see, and I want the courage to see. And then we have to also remember that these potentials that I was mentioning in the three chakras, it's in everyone. we could come to that. And then we get to the heart. Did you have a sense of the heart at that place? Like, no one is excluded. You want, in fact, the felt sense is, I want everyone included. I want no one to be excluded from there. So this is important work for us right now, because even if we just arrived 20 years ago on the planet, or 25 or 50 years ago in my case, or 70 years ago for some of you, the difficulties did not start yesterday. We arrived to difficulties, but we're here. So there's something that we can participate in. That's why when Viktor Frankl says aim, he's basically saying aim up here. If you want to land here, you've got to aim here to get there. If you aim only for this, you make man worse. That's what he's saying, you make man worse. So we have to have this kind of aiming, which means we need each other. We need the Sangha, because we can't be resilient or restored or replenished all on our own. I know many of you are introverts. I am as well. I love my introvert days, but I certainly need this as well to feel like we're sharing the path and the practice. Anybody else who wants to say how you experienced the meditation? It might be beneficial to somebody else to know of your experience.
Yeah.
Tracy, is that you?
Nope, Thelma.
Oh, hi, honey. Thank you.
It was beautiful. It was really moving. Really like heart opening. My heart just feels like so vast. I don't know, maybe because I truly believe it. Just, yeah, that's kind of been the prayer I've been saying, and just comes natural, and I don't know, it's really touching. So thank you.
Thanks for sharing, and also for the sweet sorrow or tenderness in your voice right now, the vulnerability that I'm feeling from you. It's welcome. It's okay to have the tears that come with such sweetness. The second chakra, vulnerability, but also sweetness. It's okay. Thank you, Alma. Kathy, anything for you? Kathy from Wasilla?
Yes, I just want to say that meditation was beautiful. And I also just want to share that my feelings are that our vibrations spread so deeply that this is our opportunity to uplift the world. So let's shine as best we can.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
Yeah. We have to stay very clear on the path, because as I said in the beginning of our talk, we're in the minority still. It's a small percentage of people interested in awakening and Dharma. We feel there's lots of us because we have a lot of friends and a lot of yoga clothing companies and so on. But we're actually still in the minority, so we have to stay clear, because my sense is as we stay clear, the people who are really distressed and unable to find their ground right now will see something in our lives, and they may find that appealing. Just like we've seen it in somebody else's life and we think, oh, yoga actually kind of works. It's actually helpful. So without any, overt kind of missionary activity, you're just a yoga ambassador, a vibration ambassador. Yeah. Thank you, Kathy.
Sarahjoy.
Yeah.
I wanted to agree with what you just said. I had a conversation with a yoga friend the other day, and he was feeling frustrated about this inward dive associated with yoga and how he doesn't feel like a lot of the yoga community is doing enough by simply meditating and prayer. And of course we can see that, right, where it's more of an individualistic practice. But I offered him, much like what you just said, that there's a shift energetically that happens within us when we're practicing. and that becomes attractive to other people.
Yeah.
And it starts to multiply from there. And also, I don't know who said it, but that depth, it goes really, really deep, to, you know, a level of an unconscious that people aren't aware of, and it becomes a stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just wanted to share with you that I agree the practice is very important.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, my husband went to the grocery store today, even our little one here in the neighborhood called Barber World Foods. And he came back and he said, you know, everyone seems very frightened and as if you're already the enemy to them. This was just him picking up on that at the grocery store. And I picture when a yogi walks in, again, we're not like there to announce that yoga works. It's not like that. It's just this quiet sense of being able to feel the vulnerability that's present, being able to feel the other humans, to feel the larger picture and the intimate experience that we're having too. Not just to get our particular sourdough bread, which was forgotten actually. So there was no wrath about the sourdough bread being forgotten, but I'm bringing it up because, you know, then you have the pragmatics too, the pragmatics. Okay, one of those pragmatics is our healthy bedtime. So I'm going to bring us to a close here. Again, I just want to celebrate Sarah for being you're going to be one of my stories going forward, because so many times people tell me they can't have yoga here or there or in their workplace, and I'm telling them, make it possible. So thank you for being a champion of this. It's really good to see you again in this way. And thank you to everyone whose face I can see and whose names I can see. I see that you're here. I'm glad to have had you here. And in the morning, we will have 9 a.m. yoga class tomorrow. Between now and then, please sleep well, nourish each other and yourself. Thank you. Namaste.